Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the final tabletop conversation presented by the Texas Injury Prevention Leadership Collaborative. Shelly and I just want to thank everyone for taking time to listen to these through our summer series of these conversations. We hope they've been helpful as we try to adjust to our new environments. This is the final tabletop conversation for the summer. We hope you enjoy it. We are joined by Jamila Porter, who joined us in our first conversation, and we'll talk a little bit about the process that we use to put these together and a little bit about where we're going with these in the future and what some things you could be looking forward to, as these will not be available every week going forward. There may be some more in the future, but we hope that regardless of when the next one comes out, if another one comes out, you found these helpful, you found them to have some relevance to your work, and we let us know how you felt, whether or not you'd like to see these come back. Either way, thank you so much for listening to all these conversations. We truly appreciate it. We hope you have a great day. Jamila, Shelli, thanks for coming back to these conversations, and this is a really important conversation I think we have today, because this is actually our final tabletop conversation for the Texas Injury Prevention Leadership Collaborative in our summer series of these conversations. So what we wanted to do today, for the people who have been watching these videos, and we want to first thank you all so much for your support in these videos and watching them and giving us feedback on them throughout the summer. But we wanted to give everybody a little bit of insight about how we came up with the idea, what goes into making some of these videos, what are the things we needed to do to actually get these conversations off the ground, and then kind of the future direction of where we are going to go with these conversations in the future, and what you can kind of lean on now that we're not going to be putting these out every week. So first thing I wanted to say is, Shelli, Jamila, thanks for having these and starting this all with me. Shelli, if you don't mind, can you talk a little bit about where we just kind of came from with these conversations and how we started this kind of process?
Sure. So it's hard to imagine. I counted up. I think this is week 15 from the first time that we actually aired the first conversation. And I was, we're 1 month into pretty much COVID-19 lockdown. So it's mid-April, late April, and I'm still feeling uneasy about the future and what everything is going to look like. And I'm wanting to do something fun. And I reach out to both of you and said, hey, how about we record some conversations? And I think one of the things is that I wanted to do is think about being able to model what a good conversation looks like. So much of what we see is we're watching webinars to get information, and that's great, but it's people talking to you or at you. We're watching on TV and we're watching the news, and it's people talking at you or to you. And I really feel like, this is just my personal opinion, sometimes feels like that we've lost the art of conversation. And so I wanted to have start something that we could model what good conversation looks like. I know that a lot of the training that we have been doing with the Texas Injury Prevention Leadership Collaborative is on essential leadership skills. And some of those essential skills are active listening, and listening not to be able to refute an argument, but to listen to learn. And I was hopeful that that's what would come across in these conversations. And, I reached out to two people I like having conversations with, and that's and you both were agreeable to it. And Kevin, I've got to say thanks to you, because you've really taken on the yeoman's work and all of this in terms of producing and editing and things like that. And I know it's been a lot for you. And I don't know that we started this with the idea that it was going to be a summer series, but here we are toward the end of the summer, and whether this is our new reality looks different than it did in March, but we now have things that we've gotten acclimated into our current situation, and figuring out ways to do the work that we were doing back in January, just a different way. And so I don't know that we have time to continue to do this. And I think there are other opportunities out there, other groups like Safe States, and I know Jamila will talk about some of the things that Safe States is doing with the conversations and everything. But I kind of want to, and Kevin, I know you want to get to kind of the process and everything, but I'm interested in hearing from Jamila why you all, and it's us now that I'm with Safe States, how we came to the idea of kind of going down the conversation route as opposed to just the traditional webinars and things like that, which Safe State still does a lot of for learning opportunities. But why did you decide on this format?
Well, I think a lot has happened in the last few months, right? So we've been dealing with the pandemic. We've also been dealing and coping as a nation with the murder of George Floyd and just all of the ramifications of not coping with racism in the US. And so I think the culmination of all of these issues and topics made it critical to be having conversations and to be having meaningful discussions. And that coupled with the fact that under stay-at-home orders, people haven't been coming and going and having as much interaction with colleagues and family. And so I think just all of these pieces together have made the idea of having conversations virtually, listening to pre-recorded conversations that much more interesting and that much more engaging. So, and I would say it also feels, at least for me, that having conversations is more important now to hear what people are thinking and feeling around different topics, especially more sensitive topics. That seems to be more of the need now, as opposed to our classic one-way sort of webinar communication. And I would argue that even that kind of virtual presentation has changed a lot in the past few months, and the need to make even those sort of research presentations more engaging for audiences, because I think there's the other part I had mentioned is sort of Zoom fatigue and people having to be online a lot. So what does it take to keep people engaged and feeling thoughtful and positive about being online and getting new information online?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, especially when I think about early in the situation, which we talked about when we were trying to plan this out in March type of time. We didn't really have a good sense of how talking over the computer would affect people and how much time we would have people spending looking at screens in a different way and not having that personal interaction that most of us, especially who work in public health, are really used to. And I think early when we were putting this together, it was one thing, and I'll be very honest, at one point it became like oh man, I got to go sit on another camera and be on camera again with these. And I think, and that progressed over time, where it became more realism. Like every time I asked somebody to be in one of these conversations, it was thinking, okay, I'm asking them to be on camera for another half hour today and be present on camera, as opposed to being in person. I think that's a lot, something I didn't anticipate that you bring up about, how the progression potentially has changed. And then the conversations we're having, how they're changing. When Shelli and I first came up with this, we're like, all right, how do we talk about different aspects in the age of COVID-19 when we really didn't really know much about what the age of COVID-19 really was, and what we're currently living through, because it was so early in the situation.
Well, and one other thing that I would add is that as much as I am going to miss not seeing, because everything has gone virtual, the conferences have gone virtual. Safe States Conference is gonna be virtual. Those are some of my closest friends, and I'm gonna miss not seeing them, giving them hugs and things like that. But one of the things, and I think it's a wealth of information, whether it's the Safe States Conference or other conferences that I attend. But often some of my most meaningful learning comes in the networking or in those conversations, as opposed to just through the traditional, somebody getting up and giving a presentation. And I think that was part of the hope here, is that there would be still some learning taking place just by listening to other people talk and have a conversation.
Yeah, actually, when you say that too, it makes me think about the The times where we were able to bring in people like Jamila and like myself and you, who are not physically together most of the time and most of the year. I'm only at Safe States once a year for the most part. Or when we I think back to our young professionals video we did, where we had somebody from Seattle and we had somebody from the Fort Worth area and the Austin area who would probably never have a lot of opportunity to just have a conversation with each other about whatever the topic was, being a young professional. And I think those are the things we were trying to replicate in these videos, was those intimate moments where you're having, I think Safe States, my favorite times are the dinners. Not, education is education. I can get a lot of that through white paper, but I can't have the dinner experiences in a white paper. So I think those are some things we were trying to mimic in these virtual platforms.
So Kevin, tell us a little bit about how much time, because I know you've gotten calls and emails about, hey, this is a cool thing. How much time does it take? And
yeah, I think one of the things that, I didn't anticipate when we first started these, and also I didn't know how much time I had to do it when we were starting, was like how much of an investment it is to actually put one of these videos out. What you see on YouTube in a 10 to 15 minute clip is a lot of time spent. You have to account for getting people to be in your conversation, which, that Shelli and I probably can speak to it. That's a hard thing when you're trying to convince, first of all, coming up with a topic that's meaningful. So Shelli and I would have brainstorming sessions about what topics. I had a blackboard full of ideas, then finding people who would be meaningful in that conversation, and then scheduling them, recording it, which you see a 15-minute video, we actually record on video for about 30, 35 minutes. And then once that's over, it takes 2 hours, 2.5 hours sometimes to edit one of these things down to fit into a 15-minute window. And so it's presentable. And I think that's something that people don't really think about, is all the editing time and the upload time to YouTube and going through their process. That does take some effort, and it does take a lot of time. So you're looking, any one of a 10 to 15 minute clip, you're looking at potentially 6-7 hours of a full work for any one video, when you count all the steps you have to do. So, I mean, it's a lot. So I think that's something that people who want to do these or do something similar, not necessarily this, should be prepared to commit to, which I didn't really know.
And we made the decision early on that we're going to do a video that we edit, or that you edit, we put on YouTube. Jamila, the critical conversation that I participated in that you moderated on youth violence a few weeks ago was actually a live. It was not pre-recorded, so it was all the participants that were there. You had to make sure all the technology's working and everybody's up to speed. You want to just say a little bit about that and the time involved in trying to put that together?
Yeah, well, so that conversation was it was something that we did in the moment because there was a moment, and we wanted to have a conversation about, structural racism, how it's infused in policy and practice, and how that has ramifications on youth, and what does that look like, and unpack that a little bit. And so we scheduled that conversation for an hour, and we thought that would be a lot. We thought that people would be tired. And we found that was too short, and that amazingly to us, people could have probably hung on another half hour or more. And so, and we really just touched the surface of a lot of different topics, everything from economics to education and housing. So I think the lessons learned from that is that people are hungry to hear conversations about this, to hear from people. And that was another consideration, is that we had speakers. I think we had Sheila Savannah from Prevention Institute. We had Brian Smedley from the American Psychological Association. We had a youth that is also part of APA's youth initiatives, and Mighty Fine from the American Public Health Association, and just having a conversation from our personal experiences, or, it's connected to where we come from our professional points of view, but it was very much a conversation about our own individual experiences, perspectives, and opinions. And I think that unsurprisingly, given how we know cable media appeals to a lot of people, and just hearing people talk about issues. I think that that's something public health is maybe newer to, because we're so accustomed to trying to always share information and data objectively that, you know, now I think we've really started to embrace hearing perspectives and having those perspectives in conversation, and whether there's dissent or agreement, the flow of those conversations is really appealing to people.
Well, and I think just to touch on something that you said, I think that people, I also think people are hungry for conversations. While Kevin and I have made the decision to try and do quick vignettes, and Kevin can tell you, kind of looking at the back end of the YouTube analytics, how many minutes people are actually watching the videos. While they're not likely to probably sit down and watch, unless they've got a lot of time, a video for an hour or even for 30 minutes or something like that. All of these conversations that we've had, people want to talk. And I think, you know, we've had to cut these conversations off, and then Kevin edits them down. So I'm not surprised that you said, well, we thought an hour would be plenty, and an hour wasn't enough, because people are just, they want to have conversations, and they want to have, when you go deep and meaningful, it just lasts longer.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I was going to say the one thing that stuck out to me when she said that, and what you just said, was pretty much in every recording we did, somebody at the end would say, so-and-so and I could talk about this all day. That happened quite frequently during our conversations. And I'm like, yeah, we do know that. And then we're glad to hear you could talk about it. And then the other point is to continue the conversation, potentially not on camera. I think that's an important thing, is that these are supposed to be a jumping off point on any given topic to say, okay, other people are talking about it. How do we continue this conversation? Because these are just 3 or 4, sometimes 2 perspectives on any given topic. So, you know, I think one thing to encourage from all the videos we have, and if you're watching this, you know, go back, watch the other ones, and have a conversation with your people who are directly around you about the similar things that we've talked about. If you're a new professional, think about how you would talk to new professionals. If you're a PhD or in pursuit of one, why are you going to go do that? If you want, the one that really, you know, the one we started this was leadership during this time. Okay, ask yourself, how am I having conversations about leadership? And what am I doing to change how we're doing whatever we were doing now that I've got my feet under me 6 months in?
Yeah, so I could talk to you guys forever. I know you have to edit this one, Kevin, and then Jamila, we will certainly be posting information on the Texas Injury Prevention Leadership Collaborative website about all of the upcoming critical conversations that Safe States is doing. So hate to cut us off, but
since I'm going to edit, I'm going to pull the executive, I'm editing it. I do want to just say one thing. While this is the last one of these tabletop conversations that we're going to put out on a weekly basis, we obviously want you to check out the Safe States conversations. No matter how many of them, when they come out, always, you know, be on the lookout for other outside organizations. But also keep in mind, if we find, for the Texas people, if we find something that's a really important conversation that we should be having as Texas injury prevention, we can always come back and do a longer time conversation, and maybe something we do just as a collaborative once in a while, as opposed to the every type of week type of thing. So be on the lookout. If, you know, we decide that in 3 months we're like, hey, this is a really important thing that's happened, maybe we should talk about it, you know, that could still potentially be an option.
Sounds good.
And I want to thank Shelli. Thank you so much, because this is her brainchild.
And thank you both for inviting me to join you. This has been great.
Thanks, Jamila.
Thanks for watching, and remember to subscribe.